I am Ruby Bennett, 38 years old. I've spent the last decade building a life I thought was built on love, trust, and a shared commitment to family. 5 years ago, I married Richard, a man who already had two children, Liam, 14, and Sophie, 12, from his previous relationship. I knew this wouldn't be easy, blending our lives, but I loved them both. They became my children just as much as my own. But things had changed. Richard's work schedule had always been demanding, but lately it was more than that. I found myself sitting in the quiet of our home, glancing at the clock as I waited for him to return. Thursday nights had always been a bit of a mystery. He'd go out for book club, a vague reference to something that never really seemed to add up. He'd come home late, smelling faintly of cologne, the kind I didn't recognize. The first time I noticed, it was harmless. Maybe a hug, I thought. Maybe a client. Maybe a colleague. But soon, it wasn't just one night. It was every Thursday. Every single Thursday, I found myself alone with the kids while he was out discussing literature. I never questioned it at first, but then it became hard to ignore. That night, as I was folding laundry, I picked up Richard's shirt and paused. There was something different about it, something unfamiliar. The faint scent of another woman's perfume lingered on the fabric, and I could feel the blood in my veins turning cold. I put the shirt down, my fingers lingering on the fabric for just a moment too long. It wasn't just that. It was the tiny things, little moments when Richard would act distant, distracted, as if there was something else weighing on him. When he returned home, he never looked me in the eye the same way anymore. There was always an air of distraction around him, as though he was somewhere else, somewhere I wasn't. The kids didn't notice, or at least they didn't ask, but I did, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. Something wasn't adding up. That night, I decided to take a closer look. I opened our shared family computer and scrolled through the email inbox. I knew it was a risk. I knew it wasn't the most honest way to find out the truth, but I needed something, anything, to ease the growing suspicion in the pit of my stomach. I had my answer soon enough. There were emails, not to clients or colleagues, but to someone named Miranda, a name I didn't recognize. They were dated on Thursday nights, the very same nights Richard had been out. They weren't just casual messages, they were intimate, affectionate, the kind of messages I would have never imagined seeing between my husband and another woman. The subject lines mentioned hotels, dinners, and weekend getaways. My heart sank. I should have stopped there. I should have left the computer, closed the browser, walked away. But I didn't. I couldn't. My mind raced, and every moment I spent staring at those words made the knot in my chest tighten. I wasn't naive. I knew exactly what was happening. He was having an affair. But how long had this been going on? What was I missing? The emails were bad enough, but then I found something else. A receipt. It was for a hotel stay in a city we'd visited a few months ago, the same city he'd claimed he was visiting for work. The hotel was too far from the conference to be a coincidence. I recognized the name. It was the same hotel he'd been staying at, according to his work schedule. That was it. The truth was right there in front of me, but I couldn't face it. Not yet. Not until I had the whole picture. I went to bed that night with the cold weight of reality pressing down on me. Richard came in hours later, barely acknowledging my presence. He kissed me lightly on the cheek, the familiar scent of cologne that wasn't his clinging to him. I felt sick. I couldn't sleep. My mind kept racing, trying to piece it together. I knew I had to confront him, soon, but I couldn't yet. I wasn't ready for the inevitable fallout. I wasn't ready to shatter everything I thought I knew about my life. The next few days felt like a blur. Every conversation with Richard was strained. Every glance, every word, every touch felt hollow. He was still my husband, still the man I loved, but in that moment, I could feel the distance growing between us. And then, Thursday night came again. I watched him leave, his coat thrown over his shoulder, the same rehearsed smile on his face as he kissed me goodbye. "I'll be late," he said, as always. "Book club." But I couldn't shake the feeling that the man walking out that door was no longer the one I'd married. The next morning, I woke up with a gnawing pit in my stomach. I didn't sleep. Not really. I kept tossing and turning, imagining all the things Richard had said, all the excuses he'd given. I thought about the emails, the hotel receipts, the cologne that wasn't his. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was missing something that would tie everything together. That evening, when Richard went out again, I made a decision. I had to know for sure. I wasn't going to let myself live in a fog of suspicion and half-truths. I hired a private investigator. His name was Mike, retired cop, sharp, professional. I didn't tell him much about the specifics, just that I suspected my husband was cheating and that I needed proof. I was calm when I made the call, but inside, my world was spinning. Mike told me to keep things as normal as possible. Richard would be under surveillance, but the less I interacted with him in a way that might raise suspicion, the better. So I carried on, pretending everything was fine while Mike did his job. The first few days felt surreal. I watched as Richard left for work, took the kids to school, and came home like everything was normal. But every Thursday night, when he left for his book club, I felt the weight of the truth pressing against me. I knew where he was really going. I knew what he was really doing. Mike was thorough, keeping track of Richard's movements. He followed him for weeks, documenting every detail. The first week, it was just a quick coffee shop rendezvous with someone who wasn't me. The next week, they were at a restaurant. By the fourth Thursday, Mike had gathered the footage, the hotel lobby footage, clear as day. Richard and Miranda were walking into a hotel together. I felt my stomach drop when I saw the footage. There they were, hand in hand, walking into the same hotel Richard had stayed at during the work conference. I couldn't stop staring at the screen, but something inside me was almost numb. The evidence was undeniable. Mike followed them over the next few weeks, capturing more footage, taking more photos. Everything was documented, the dates, the times, the locations. Every Thursday, I got a report. The hotel stays, the dinners, the conversations that took place in public places, the sly glances between them. But it wasn't just the surveillance that made the truth hit home. It was the small things. How Richard's phone buzzed every few minutes when he was home. How his body language had changed when I asked simple questions. He had no idea that Mike was watching, that I was listening, that I was piecing it all together. I felt like I was living in a world where I didn't exist, just a shadow, while Richard played out a secret life behind my back. The breaking point came when I found the texts. One night, I was going through the family cloud account. I'd checked the texts before, but this time I was looking for something specific. And then I found it, hidden among work emails and kid photos. A message thread with Miranda, synced from Richard's old tablet. It had been backed up automatically, a detail I hadn't even thought to check. The messages were explicit. They talked about their meetings, about what they did in the hotel rooms, details too graphic to ignore. I felt the walls of our life crumbling around me. The truth was staring me in the face, and I could no longer deny it. The image of Richard, the man I thought I knew, became a stranger. I stared at the phone screen, my hands shaking, feeling like I was watching a different version of my life unfold, one that had been kept from me for far too long. I should have confronted him then, but I didn't. Not yet. I needed to gather the full scope of the betrayal, to give myself the power of certainty. Instead, I took action. I called Mike and asked for everything. Every piece of evidence, every photo, every video. I needed the facts. I needed something undeniable, something that would force Richard to face the truth. I needed to have it all in my hands before I confronted him. The next day, Mike sent me everything. The photos, the video clips, the receipts, the text messages. Everything was there, all laid out in front of me like a cold, hard truth. The weight of it all sank in, but instead of feeling like I was drowning, I felt strangely calm. The worst part wasn't the affair itself. It wasn't the betrayal or the lies. It wasn't even the fact that Richard had been living a double life for so long. It was that he didn't think I would find out. He didn't think I would ever see it. That night, after the kids were asleep, I waited for Richard to come home. I could hear his car in the driveway before the door opened, and my heart picked up its pace. He stepped inside, looking the same as always, distracted, tired, maybe even a little guilty. I didn't waste any time. I pulled out the phone, showing him the messages, the photos, the video footage of him with Miranda. His face went white as he saw the evidence unfold before him. "Ruby, he started, but I cut him off. "No, don't say a word. You've said enough already. I know everything." For a moment, he just stood there, stunned, unable to speak. His mouth opened and closed, like he was trying to find words that didn't exist. I wasn't angry. Not yet. Just numb. I had prepared myself for this moment, but it was still hard to face. The man I thought I was married to was standing there, caught in his lies, and all I could feel was exhaustion. He didn't say anything at first, just stood there. Then, after a long, painful silence, he finally spoke. "I didn't want to hurt you, Ruby. I didn't think you'd find out." His voice cracked, and for a moment I almost felt sorry for him. But then I remembered everything. Every Thursday night I spent alone, every time I questioned his absence, every little lie he'd told to cover up the affair. "I don't want your apologies," I said quietly. "I want you to leave." The room was heavy with silence, thick with the weight of the truth. He stood there for a long moment, and I thought he might argue, might try to explain. But he didn't. Instead, he just walked out, and that was it. I had what I needed: the evidence, the truth, and the strength to move forward. But I couldn't shake the thought of Miranda, the woman who had taken my husband, the woman who had helped tear my family apart. I hadn't even thought about her much until that moment, but now I knew. She wasn't just some fling. She was the one who had been there, in our home, in our lives, for far too long. The morning after I confronted Richard, I sat at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee that had long since gone cold. The kids were at school, and the house was quiet, too quiet. My hands trembled slightly as I organized the files Mike had sent me: photos, hotel receipts, text screenshots, and video clips. Every piece of evidence told the same story. I had everything I needed to protect myself, my children, and our home. I called Eleanor Kastner, a family lawyer who specialized in high-conflict divorces. Calm, professional, and unshakable, she was exactly the person I needed. I explained the situation, handed over the evidence, and together we started plotting a path forward. There would be no messy revenge, no impulsive actions, just a clean, legal dismantling of a marriage that had been built on lies. The first step was filing for divorce. I knew the prenup would be crucial. When Richard and I had married, we had agreed on a prenup that included an infidelity clause. If either of us cheated, the cheater would forfeit claims to alimony and a majority of shared assets. I had suggested updates to include maintaining trust and fidelity. Richard had reluctantly agreed at the time. Now, that prenup was my shield. Within a few days, the divorce papers were sent to Richard. Along with them went a comprehensive evidence package: photos of Richard and Miranda together, timestamps, hotel receipts, and all the explicit text messages from their years-long affair. Eleanor assured me it was airtight. And then, of course, Miranda intervened. She came storming into my life like a hurricane. Threats, dramatic phone calls, accusations of parental alienation, even the audacious claim that she should have custody of Richard's children. Every demand she made, house, assets, child support, was based on lies and manipulation. I remember the day she first showed up at our home. The kids were at school, and Richard had been out for work. The doorbell rang insistently. When I opened it, there she was, Miranda, in a black dress, her hair in a conservative bun, holding herself like she was the wronged victim of some terrible injustice. She began crying almost immediately, dramatic tears flowing freely as she accused me of destroying her life. I listened, cold and measured. I said nothing, letting her exhaust herself. Her threats didn't shake me. The evidence did. Everything she claimed, harassment, invasion of privacy, parental alienation, was documented. Photos, receipts, texts, videos. Every claim she made could be disproven. The legal battle escalated in the courtroom. I remember sitting there, watching her theatrics unfold in front of Judge Hoffman, a stern, no-nonsense magistrate with 20 years on the bench. She claimed psychological abuse, alleged stalking, even parental alienation. But when confronted with the evidence, hotel videos, receipts, text logs, the truth was undeniable. One of her most audacious moves was claiming she was pregnant. The courtroom went silent when she made the announcement, but Eleanor was prepared. She requested proof and pointed out the timing, the affair, the evidence, the prenup. The claim quickly fell apart. Miranda had hoped this would delay proceedings, manipulate the court, and cast me as unreasonable. It failed spectacularly. The temporary orders were granted in my favor. Custody arrangements for Liam and Sophie were confirmed, protective measures were put in place, and child support and property settlements were outlined according to the prenup. The weight that had been pressing on me for months lifted slightly. I wasn't happy, but I felt empowered. Miranda, predictably, lashed out. She tried to manipulate the system, spinning lies and casting herself as the victim, but her credibility was crumbling fast. Each attempt to disrupt the process, falsified claims, emotional outbursts, legal delays, was countered with evidence. Every argument she made only exposed the depth of her deceit. Richard, meanwhile, remained silent. His arrogance had vanished, replaced by a quiet, guilty acknowledgement that the consequences of his actions were unavoidable. I didn't need him to apologize, and I certainly didn't need him to justify his betrayal. I just needed the facts on my side, and now I had them. Throughout the process, the kids noticed the tension, of course. Liam asked subtle, careful questions, the kind children ask when they sense their parents are in turmoil. Sophie, younger but equally perceptive, observed everything in silence. I shielded them as best as I could, maintaining our routines, keeping bedtime stories and homework sessions intact. The familiar rhythms of home life became my anchor amid the chaos. Every Thursday night, the one that had become synonymous with deception and heartbreak, I found small ways to reclaim the night for myself and the children. I cooked dinner, we played games, and for the first time in months, the house felt like a home again. But the fight wasn't over. Miranda's desperate attempts to control the narrative through legal threats, social media posts, and manipulative phone calls continued. Yet each effort only highlighted her instability. And each moment, I reminded myself that I was standing on solid ground, truth, evidence, and a legal system that now recognized the depth of betrayal I had endured. I wasn't just surviving, I was reclaiming my life. The divorce was finalized last week. It felt surreal to finally close that chapter, the official, legal confirmation of a marriage that had been slowly unraveling for years. The prenup held, completely enforced. Custody of Liam and Sophie was split fairly, the kids remaining in their school, their routines intact. Our home, the one I had painstakingly nurtured as a safe space for our family, stayed with me. Richard's affairs and the manipulations of Miranda had failed to disrupt what was most important, the children's stability. Miranda's departure from the courtroom didn't mark the end of the drama, but it was the beginning of a new, quieter life. She had tried everything: legal manipulation, emotional theatrics, social media smear campaigns, but the truth had won. She had exhausted her resources chasing a fantasy, leaving behind only chaos for herself. Meanwhile, I was free, standing tall amidst the wreckage she had tried to create. The kids noticed the change too. For the first time in months, our evenings weren't shadowed by secrecy or tension. Liam and Sophie were more relaxed, asking questions about life and the future, rather than sneaking glances at the clock, worrying if Thursday night meant trouble. We began reclaiming simple joys: Taco Tuesdays, homework sessions together, movie nights in the living room. The familiar rhythms of family life became a healing balm for all of us. Richard tried, in his own awkward way, to reach out after everything. A text, a hesitant phone call, a few awkward encounters. I ignored them. There was no closure needed from him. He had made his choices. I had made mine. My focus was entirely on the kids, on their well-being, and on rebuilding trust within our little family. It was strange at first, living without the constant tension of lies and secrets. I had spent years monitoring, questioning, and fearing the next revelation. But now there was silence, a clean, honest silence. I spent my Thursday nights differently. No more dread, no more hiding, no more pretending. I had a fresh sense of control over my life. I could breathe again. I also learned that healing doesn't happen all at once. There were moments of doubt, moments of anger that bubbled up unexpectedly, moments when the memories of betrayal hit like a punch in the stomach. But I processed them, documented them in my journal, and shared my feelings with a therapist who guided me through the complex emotional terrain. I didn't need revenge or validation. I needed clarity, and I had found it. The most surprising part of recovery was noticing the small victories. The way Liam smiled a little brighter after school, how Sophie hugged me a little longer at bedtime, the way our home finally felt like a sanctuary instead of a battlefield. Those were the victories that mattered most. And life continued to surprise me. I ran into Miranda once more at a local store. She was with a new partner, loudly recounting the horrors of her past relationship, trying to shape her narrative. I watched quietly, holding Liam's hand, as Sophie reached for the cart. They didn't notice her antics, and I didn't intervene. The contrast between her chaos and my calm was staggering. My life had moved forward. Hers had stalled. I realized something essential that day. the power of truth, evidence, and self-respect. My life didn't have to be defined by the betrayal I endured. I wasn't just surviving, I was thriving. For me, for the kids, for the life we were building together, every Thursday night became a symbol of freedom rather than deception. A quiet, ordinary evening became extraordinary through the stability and love we nurtured. I smiled as Liam asked, "Mom, can we go camping next weekend?" I nodded. "Absolutely. It's a real trip this time. No excuses." Sophie giggled. "Promise no book clubs?" "Promise," I said, feeling a weight lift from my shoulders. And in that moment, I finally understood. Life doesn't stop after betrayal. It just changes its rhythm, and sometimes that change is exactly what you need to finally find peace. It's been a few months since the divorce was finalized, and the dust has finally settled. Life has a way of moving forward, whether we're ready for it or not. I remember the days when the house felt like a battlefield, the air thick with tension, my mind constantly racing with the fear of the next lie or the next betrayal. Now our home is different. It's peaceful. There's still work to be done, of course. There always is when you're rebuilding your life. But the foundation is solid. The kids are adjusting well. We've found our rhythm again. Liam and Sophie are both excelling in school, and they've started opening up more, asking questions about what happened, why things changed. I've answered as honestly as I can, without painting a distorted picture. They've seen the truth unfold, and even though they're still young, they understand more than I ever expected. I think they know that the love and security we've built together is far more important than any past betrayal. Some mornings, when I watch them argue over who gets the last pancake or bicker over TV shows, I catch myself smiling. There's a normalcy to it now. The everyday moments that used to seem mundane have become little victories, tiny victories that are mine to cherish. As for Richard, I haven't heard from him in a while. His attempts at reaching out have dwindled to nothing, and I'm grateful for it. The last time I saw him at a legal mediation session, his eyes were different, guilty, maybe even a little broken, but I didn't need to fix him. He made his choices, and those choices had consequences. I learned to accept that. He hasn't shown up at the kids' events. He hasn't tried to make amends. Maybe that's his way of accepting the distance between us. I have no desire to keep tabs on his life. What matters now is that the kids are thriving, that I've finally been able to let go of the anger, the hurt. Some days, when the silence feels too quiet, I catch myself wondering if this was all part of the plan, the betrayal, the heartache, the painful truth that led me here. I used to think I was trapped in a life I couldn't escape, that my love for Richard would bind me forever to a life of secrets and uncertainty. But I was wrong. Life doesn't stop after betrayal. It simply evolves. It forces you to grow, to find strength you didn't know you had. In the darkest moments, I realized I had the power to choose my next chapter. I could sit in the sorrow of the past, or I could walk forward and embrace the unknown. I chose the unknown. I've started dating again, something I never imagined I would do so soon. It's been slow, gentle even. I'm not rushing into anything. I've met someone, a kind man named Ryan, who has been patient and understanding of the space I need. We go out for coffee, take long walks in the park with the kids, and slowly, carefully build something new. He isn't Richard, and he doesn't try to be. He's simply himself, present, steady, and kind. That's all I need right now. The kids have been surprisingly accepting of Ryan. They've never asked for a replacement father. They just want someone who treats me well and cares for them. Ryan does that. And maybe, someday, if we're all ready, we'll see where it goes, but I'm not in a hurry to rush things. My focus is on creating the life that we deserve, not rushing to fill the gaps of the past. As for Miranda, I haven't seen her in months, and honestly, I don't care to. She's moved on, or so it seems, and maybe the world will turn, and she'll find her own way out of the wreckage she created. But I don't need to be a part of that story anymore. My story is mine to write. And so far, it's been about rediscovery of myself, of my children, of what love really is. I've learned that healing isn't linear. There are still moments when the past creeps into my mind, when I catch a fleeting image of Richard's face, or hear a song that reminds me of our early years together. Those moments sting, but they don't control me. They don't own me anymore. I've reclaimed my narrative, and I won't let the past define who I am today. We're planning a family camping trip next month. No more book club excuses, no more hiding behind false promises. Just us, together in the woods, away from the noise, away from the past. It'll be an adventure, one where we can laugh, explore, and just be. And for the first time in a long time, I'm not afraid of the future. I know who I am, I know what I'm capable of, and I know what I deserve. I'm stronger now, more than I ever thought I could be. And the best part, I'm free.